Please like the video and share it so that it reaches many more people and you get sawaba, or rewards from Allah. This could be a sawabe jariyah or continuous reward for you long after you are gone.
Al-Adha Sacrifice, Volume 7, Book 68, number 453,480. Volume 7, Book 68, number 453. Narrated by Al-Bara, the Prophet said, on the day of Al-Adha, the first thing we will do on this day of ours is to offer the Eid prayer and then return to slaughter the sacrifice. Whoever does so, he acted according to our sunnah, tradition, and whoever slaughtered the sacrifice before the prayer, what he offered was just meat he presented to his family, and that will not be considered as nusak, sacrifice. On hearing that, Abu Burda bin Niyar got up, for he had slaughtered the sacrifice before the prayer, and said, I have got a 6-month-old ram. The Prophet said, slaughter it as a sacrifice, but it will not be sufficient for anyone else as a sacrifice after you. Al-Bara added, the Prophet said, whoever slaughtered the sacrifice after the prayer, he slaughtered it at the right time and followed the tradition of the Muslims. Volume 7, Book 68, number 454. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet said, whoever slaughtered the sacrifice before the prayer, he just slaughtered it for himself. And whoever slaughtered it after the prayer, he slaughtered it at the right time and followed the tradition of the Muslims. Volume 7, Book 68, number 455. Narrated by Uqba bin Amir al-Juhani that the Prophet distributed among his companions some animals for sacrifice, to be slaughtered on Eid al-Adha. Uqba's share was a jadha, a 6-month-old goat. Uqba said, O Allah's Apostle, I get in my share of jadha, a 6-month-old ram. The Prophet said, slaughter it as a sacrifice. Volume 7, Book 68, number 456. Narrated by Aisha that the Prophet entered upon her when she had her menses at Sarif before entering Mecca, and she was weeping, because she was afraid that she would not be able to perform the Hajj. The Prophet said, what is wrong with you? Have you got your period? She said, yes. He said, this is a matter Allah has decreed for all the daughters of Adam, so perform all the ceremonies of Hajj like the others, but do not perform the tawaf around the Kaaba. Aisha added, when we were at Mina, beef was brought to me and I asked, what is this? They, the people, said, Allah's Apostle has slaughtered some cows as sacrifices on behalf of his wives. Volume 7, Book 68, number 457. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet said on the day of Nahr, whoever has slaughtered his sacrifice before the prayer, should repeat it, slaughter another sacrifice. A man got up and said, O Allah's Apostle, this is a day on which meat is desired. He then mentioned his neighbors saying, I have a 6-month-old ram which is to me better than the meat of 2 sheep. The Prophet allowed him to slaughter it as a sacrifice, but I do not know whether this permission was valid for other than that man or not. The Prophet then went towards 2 rams and slaughtered them, and then the people went towards some sheep and distributed them among themselves. Volume 7, Book 68, number 458. Narrated by Abu Bakr, the Prophet said, time has come back to its original state which it had on the day Allah created the heavens and the earth. The year is 12 months, 4 of which are sacred, 3 of them are in succession, namely Dhul Qa'dah, Dhul Hijjah and Muharram, the fourth being Rajab Mudar, which is between Jamada, Atham J and Shaban. The Prophet then asked, "Which month is this?" We said, "Allah and his apostle know better." He kept silent so long that we thought that he would call it by a name other than its real name. He said, "Isn't it the month of Dhul Hijjah?" We said, "Yes." He said, "Which town is this?" We said, "Allah and his apostle know better." He kept silent so long that we thought that he would call it by a name other than its real name. He said, "Isn't it the town of Mecca?" We replied, "Yes." He said, "What day is today?" We replied, "Allah and his apostle know better." He kept silent so long that we thought that he would call it by a name other than its real name. He said, "Isn't it the day of Nar?" We replied, "Yes." He then said, "Your blood, properties and honor are as sacred to one another as this day of yours in this town of yours in this month of yours. You will meet your Lord, and he will ask you about your deeds. Beware, do not go astray after me by cutting the necks of each other. It is incumbent upon those who are present to convey this message to those who are absent, for some of those to whom it is conveyed may comprehend it better than some of those who have heard it directly." Muhammad, the sub-narrator, on mentioning this used to say, "The Prophet then said, 'No doubt. Haven't I delivered Allah's message to you? Haven't I delivered Allah's message to you?'" Volume 7, Book 68, number 459. Narrated by Nafi, Abdullah bin Umar used to slaughter his sacrifice at the slaughtering place, i.e. the slaughtering place of the Prophet. Ibn Umar said, Allah's apostle used to slaughter camels and sheep, etc., as sacrifices at the Masala. Volume 7, Book 68, number 460. Narrated by Anas bin Malik, the Prophet used to offer 2 rams as sacrifices, and I also used to offer 2 rams. Volume 7, Book 68, number 461. Narrated by Anas, Allah's apostle came towards 2 horned rams having black and white colors and slaughtered them with his own hands. Volume 7, Book 68, number 462. Narrated by Uqba bin Amir that the Prophet gave him some sheep to distribute among his companions to slaughter as sacrifices, Eid al-Adha. A kid was left and he told the Prophet of that, whereupon he said to him, "Slaughter it as a sacrifice, on your behalf." Volume 7, Book 68, number 463. Narrated by Al-Bara bin Azib, an uncle of mine called Abu Burda, slaughtered his sacrifice before the Eid prayer. So Allah's apostle said to him, "Your slaughtered sheep was just mutton, not a sacrifice." Abu Burda said, "O Allah's apostle, I have got a domestic kid." The Prophet said, "Slaughter it as a sacrifice, but it will not be permissible for anybody other than you." The Prophet added, "Whoever slaughtered his sacrifice before the Eid prayer, he only slaughtered for himself. And whoever slaughtered it after the prayer, he offered his sacrifice properly and followed the tradition of the Muslims." Volume 7, Book 68, number 464. Narrated by Al-Bara, Abu Burda slaughtered the sacrifice before the Eid prayer, whereupon the Prophet said to him, "Slaughter another sacrifice instead of that." Abu Burda said, "I have nothing except a jadha." Shubha said, perhaps Abu Burda also said that jadha was better than an old sheep in his opinion. The Prophet said, "Never mind, slaughter it to make up for the other one, but it will not be sufficient for anyone else after you." Volume 7, Book 68, number 465. Narrated by Anas, the Prophet slaughtered 2 rams, black and white in color, as sacrifices, and I saw him putting his foot on their sides and mentioning Allah's name and takbir, Allahu Akbar. Then he slaughtered them with his own hands.